Hi, everybody. My name is Connor McDougall. I'm a professor at the UCSF School of Pharmacy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about using AI to build tutor bots to help enhance your students' education. So we know that individualized tutoring programs are among the most effective educational interventions. They improve learner confidence, narrow achievement gaps between higher and lower learners, and increase academic achievement really across every kind of student. Unfortunately, human tutoring is resource limited by the availability of skilled human tutors. For the last couple of decades, there's been research in individualized digital tutoring programs that have been progressive and shown to be really as effective as human tutoring. But these have been technically complex. They require a whole lot of if-then type programming. They've really been studied primarily in things like math and computer science. They're really not very accessible for your average faculty member to work on. However, with the advent of large language models or LLMs, there's the capability to provide sort of natural language programming for these tools, which really opens up the availability of anybody to build one of these tutor bots. There's some early data that suggests that these can drive learning gains at scale. So the great thing about digital tutoring programs is they scale easily. You're not limited by the number of humans. And they can drive engagement and motivation. So, as shown in this study from Harvard, where students were randomized to get either AI tutoring outside of classroom or to be part of an active classroom learning environment. And then there was a crossover done. Both groups, both the active lecture and the AI tutor groups, had improvements in knowledge, but the AI tutor group actually had greater gains in knowledge. This was also more efficient, so the average amount of time that the learners spent interacting with the tutor bot was significantly less than the time scheduled for the classroom lecture, although there were a tail of people who took longer. And then in terms of the learner experience, learners reporting more engaged and motivated when using the AI tutor bot and enjoyed the session about the same as the active learning. There's always a potential threat to using AI in teaching learning is inaccuracy, something that we in AI term hallucination. This hallucination can be certainly concerning, although it's been decreasing over time as models become more powerful. The hallucination is more problematic the closer to the ultimate application it is. So the closer to applying that knowledge in a patient without having other opportunities to have potential inaccuracies checked is where you tend to get into trouble. So when you're talking about early learners, who have multiple opportunities to have potential misinformation corrected, that may be an area where application of tutors and tutor bots can be done more safely because it's not like you're going to go directly from that inaccurate information to a patient. Even, however, if we are able to get the hallucination rate down to zero, there's a concern of using AI for learning because it can encourage a lack of processing. The sort of most egregious example is a complete bypass of the learning process, i.e. cheating. So if we would give learners an assignment and then unbeknownst to us, they actually use AI to complete the assignment and do no thinking of their own. However, I think more of a concern, because it's a little bit less obvious, is this idea of superficiality of learning, that the learners can use the AI not intending to cheat, but really bypassing the learning process. An example of this was in a study that looked at learners who had the opportunity to use a large language model in terms of learning new content. And then the study looked at what did they gain or lose in terms of their knowledge. And what they found is that the more messages the learners sent to the LLM asking for explanations, they actually had a net gain in learning. But when the messages that the learners sent were asking for solutions, basically just give me the answer, explain this to me in sort of the just bypass straight to the answer, then actually there was a reduction in learning. So this illustrates this idea of pedagogical prompting, meaning that how you prompt the AI in order to get it to act as an instructor may be really essential for productive learning with AI. So this was a study that cluster randomized high school math students to get no GPT access, GPTs being the AI, to get sort of raw or AI use without any sort of guidance, or to an AI system that had been prompted to act as a tutor specifically. During the practice session, where learners could use their assigned product, either no LLM, an LLM without sort of any tutoring guidance, or an LLM program to use as a tutor, the groups that had access to the AI outperformed the group that had no access. However, in the next phase of the study, when the access to the AI was taken away, the group that had access to the LLM during their practice session performed worse, actually, compared to the control group. Whereas the tutor group, although it didn't actually do better, at least didn't see a reduction in learning gains. So this suggests that just giving LLM access to learners to use it as a learning tool without providing any guidance as to how to use it can actually lead to negative consequences for their learning. A lot of this gets to the idea of how you prompt the artificial intelligence tool, something we call prompt engineering. And you can think of it as natural language processing, or excuse me, programming. You're still programming a computer system, but the LLMs allow you to do it with just English. You want to make sure that you provide instructions in a manner most likely to achieve your goals. And you think about this prompt engineering in kind of three buckets: providing context and specificity, clear instructions on the role and goal. This idea of chain of thought, meaning that you direct the AI to think in a stepwise fashion. So you tell it, think step by step and show me your thinking, the way that we might prompt our learners to. And then this idea of few shot, which really is just a matter of giving examples. So if you want the AI to act in a certain way, if you have prior examples of what a case should look like, or how you want the system to behave, providing those examples can help guide its behavior towards what you're looking for. So this is an example of a prompt designed in order to get an AI system or an LLM to act as a tutor. And this is from the work of Ethan Mollick. And what you can see here is you provide a role and a goal to the AI. You tell it sort of how you want it to act, or what you want it to be, essentially, as an upbeat, encouraging tutor. Step-by-step instructions, right? So if you want it to act more or less consistently every time that you have an interaction, you want to tell it what to do in each sequence of the interaction. Some general constraints, so ask for one question at a time, wait for responses. Personalization. So one of the key benefits and the sort of secret sauce of tutoring is being able to adapt instruction to the level of the learner. And so you want to include instruction in the AI that allows for that degree of personalization. And then finally, pedagogy, which is really just all the things we know about being a good tutor that encourages learners to build on their own knowledge and learn for themselves, as opposed to sort of just giving the learner the answers. So giving explanation, examples, and analogies, guiding in an open way, not providing immediate answers, asking students to explain their thinking, all those sorts of things are important components of getting an AI to act like a tutor. There's sort of two approaches to developing this approach as a tool. One is this idea of a pedagogical prompt, where we work on a prompt like we saw in the previous slide, but these are then instructions that are just entered by the learner during the session. So they might copy and paste that long set of text at the beginning of their interaction with the Tutorbot. These generally don't have an ability to call on course-specific learning materials, so they're just going to use the AI's general knowledge to answer questions, which can be limiting if you want the learners to concentrate on specific content. This can be done, however, on pretty much any large language model platform. It doesn't cost anything. It's a little bit of an awkward user experience to have to sort of copy and paste every time, and it's hard to customize the content. Alternatively, we can take what we call a custom assistant approach, where instead of just providing the learner with the prompt in advance, the designer enters this into the assistant before the session. These also have the capability of calling on course-specific learning materials. So if you have a set of PowerPoints or a course reader or syllabus that you want to enter, those can contribute to the customization of this assistant. Um, because of that, there's a smaller scope of LLMs that are suitable for this. And then importantly, at least the most popular platform of ChatGPT requires the subscription in order to build these models, these custom assistants. Although it doesn't necessarily cost anything for the learner to use them, but there are some limitations on interactivity. It's a much smoother user experience, and there's more capability to customize content. So what does this sort of look like? Again, you might write out in advance a prompt for a learner to, or for the LLM to act as a tutor for a specific learner, provide that prompt to your students, and then the students can sort of copy and paste the prompt into their LLM of choice. This is UCSF's sort of internal large language model. A custom assistant strategy would involve using a program that has the capability to build these sort of custom models, and you would create the prompt and provide your learning materials and use those to pre-program the tutor so that from the moment the learner logs on, they can interact with the tutor bot as opposed to having to enter any specific prompts. So let's do a quick demonstration of sort of what this looks like. The prompt itself and other resources are available at this link, which we'll also include in notes. So I'm going to change my screen sharing here. And first, we will dive into the platform. So this custom assistant version is designed on ChatGPT from OpenAI using what's called the custom GPT approach, which is something that's available only in if you have a paid subscription that costs like 20 bucks a month. There are instructions on the ChatGPT account of sort of how to do this generally. I'll show this specific use instance where I designed a bot that would act as a tutor for my specific course in infectious diseases that I teach to pharmacy students. So what you would do is go into this system, tell it you want to create a new custom GPT, and then give it a name, a description, and then a set of instructions. And so the instructions here follow those ideas we talked about earlier of sort of custom prompting, where you write a prompt that can explain how you want the LLM to act, give it a goal, a persona, a narrative, and then a stepwise approach to interacting with the learners. So introducing themselves, gathering information about the student, beginning tutoring, and then in this case, I have the capability to tell the LLM to look for specific information. So instead of just going to its general brain when it's coming up with an answer, it looks first for the answer in my course's material. So my course has a reader, basically a custom textbook, as well as a set of learning objectives. And so the LLM is going to think about those as the main sources of material before it calls on other information. And then we provide sort of the same kind of how to act like a tutor type of instructions, things to do and things not to do. So don't give immediate answers, don't provide long, detailed explanations, etc. And then sort of how to wrap up the conversation. And you can see down here the specific materials that I included in this for the LLM to call on in its interaction. So as a sort of preview of how this works, you might say, let's review urinary tract infections. And it will, ask sort of what you want to learn and why. Let's do uncomplicated cystitis empiric therapy. And so again, it's leveling to the learner. What do you already know about empiric therapy? Um, do you, what, give me something to build on. And we'll say, I'm not sure. Oh, this is just a general chat GPT thing where sometimes it will give you different options for replying. Let me uh, actually prefer of these two answers, I actually prefer this response, which is much more straightforward and to the point. So again, sort of asking, what organisms you think are likely, let's say gram negatives. And so again, here is the LLM sort of acting as a tutor and trying to bring out the knowledge and fill in gaps as opposed to just giving the answers. So this, again, this is if you have the opportunity to build one of these using ChatGPT. If you don't have that, or your students don't want to interact in that way, you can just provide write up and then provide the prompt to them. So again, here's an example of just creating a prompt, and you can modify the text in red according to whatever it is you want to teach and the specifics of your course, whether it's ID pharmacotherapy or sort of any other topic. So let's go back and talk a little bit more about sort of what this looks like. So we had the opportunity to use this in a demonstration basis in my course as an early pilot. I didn't really actively push this on the students. I said, just this is something that's available if you're interested in using it. And surprisingly, about two-thirds of the students did use it at some point in the course. The ones who didn't, some of them didn't want to sort of sign up for ChatGPT, even the free account, which is understandable and sort of a reason to try and explore alternative platforms. The ones who did use it rated it on its educational value and ease of use, and more than three-quarters found it highly valuable and easy to use. We asked the learners, what did you use it for? Not surprisingly, used it for preparing for exams and self-assessment, clarifying confusing concepts, and doing interactive learning, which are the kinds of things that we hope are sort of higher yield for learning than some of the less effective strategies that we know sometimes students engage in, like just sort of rereading. Things they liked were the concise, clear, and engaging responses from the LLM, how it was customized to our specific course as opposed to being just general, and that it gave really personalized feedback to the learners. Uh, the areas for improvement, the biggest area was actually that students who just had the free ChatGPT account were limited in the amount of interaction they could have. And so they couldn't use it for extended study periods. There were occasional complaints about, content that might be misleading or off topic, but those were actually pretty uncommon. And then there was a request for some actually extended case features there. So, just sort of globally, I think this is one example of where we can get a lot out of AI, where we can go for something that isn't necessarily have to be a perfect solution, but as long as it's 80 to 90% is good enough. But you need to deliver it at a large scale. So that's the kind of thing where we know tutoring helps. It's just really hard to scale it, but the LLMs allow us to scale it a very good, not perfect tutor across a lot of learners. And so these are just some other examples of, I think, good use cases for AI in teaching and learning. And I will just once again navigate to the place where you can find more about this Tutorbot. So our webpage on asynchronous tools for learning antimicrobials. We have a number of resources. Here is our ID Tutorbot, which links out to both sort of a generic Tutorbot that isn't customized for my course, but that can be used just generally for learning ID. Our course specific one used sort of as an example. And then as I mentioned earlier, that prompt text and instructions that you could download and customize as you like. So hopefully that's been useful and you can find new exciting applications for AI in your learners.